Okay. I'm here chatting with two fabulous 7th grade English language arts teachers, and they're going to talk us through what planning looks like when they plan together. So could you guys introduce yourselves and tell us what you do?
I'm Nicole Culbertson. I teach 7th grade ELA here at Stanton School.
Awesome.
I'm Kathy Johnny. I'm the special education resource teacher for 7th grade case manager, but I also teach a self-contained ELA class that does 7th grade curriculum at a modified rate.
Awesome. So what are you guys working on?
Well, we're working on our 15-day plan for short stories.
Okay.
That's going to be the unit, so I'm going to be going on maternity leave, and that's going to be the unit that my sub is going to be taking over, so we want to make sure that everything is all good with that.
Is it a regular thing that you guys plan together? Because I heard you say special education. You guys regularly plan together?
Yeah, we plan
the unit.
the unit. This last unit, we use the same standards and everything, but we use different books, different novels.
Okay.
The unit before that, we totally planned together. We did all of the the differentiated worksheets. We went through, we created all the assessments, we created the 15 days, and then like once a week, more than once a week, twice a week, we check in with each other, we see how things are going, and then we kind of plan for our next unit. So everything, we do everything together.
And Kathy's in one of my classes too.
Okay.
For support.
Yeah, for support. So like I know exactly what she's doing, and I've had kids from my class after IEP meetings move to her class because it's more rigorous. So when we plan together, that's a lot better for us to do that because it's like we know exactly what we need and what the students need to be successful.
Awesome. So just so the viewers know, what's our core resource?
Our core resource will be a very old book, The Language of Literature, but we also use Amplify, which is our online resource. So at the beginning of the year, we used Amplify to a T. We were like just following the online resource. What we have done is throughout the year, though, we have taken kind of the structure of Amplify, like the writing structures and all that, and kind of made it our own with our own books that we have taught before. I used to do ELA, my first 3 years here, I did ELA resource, and I planned with Nicole as well and the other ELA teacher that was on our team. And we would use like books like A Long Walk to Water that we really loved and we really wanted to teach again. So we would use our online resource that we purchased through the district, but kind of modify it to what we want to do. So it's been really nice to actually have all of that.
Cool.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to shift my screen so I can see what you're projecting, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Nicole and Kathy have a shared screen up. And talk us through what we're looking at here.
Well, this is an old 15-day plan. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to comb through it, we're going to see what we're going to be keeping. Like we're going to check this fence posts and rails. Those are the standards that we're going to be concentrating on, and then weed through as to what stories we're going to use, because now we have a little bit more options, I guess, if we have different things that we want to use. And then just knowing how Amplify works, then to modify anything, change anything that we had been using to be more rigorous, or what we're kind of looking for as far as writing pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, and our fence post, which is like so we use fence posts and rails in this district. Our fence post is our major standard we're looking at, and so our major 7th grade standard is determining central idea or themes of a text and analyzing the development, summarize the key supporting details and ideas. The unit we're on right now, our fence post has also been dealing with themes. So now we're gonna dig more into theme and central idea with these short stories. We also have our writing fence post, produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, style are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience. We're noticing a lot with these students, and I think it's because, when COVID hit, they were in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. Their writing skills aren't where they need to be. So we're really trying to hit these writing skills, really trying to incorporate it with reading, and really get them to where they need to be so they're ready for 8th grade.
Awesome. So now I see, so lots of our viewers might not know fence posts and rails, so we'll just translate that language to be essential standards and supporting standards. In District 114, those terms have kind of landed better for us. They just seem to make a little bit more sense. I know that Maria calls them boulders, rocks, and butterflies, so just to make sure we're all speaking the same language. So under those, I see some learning targets. Tell me what that means to you.
Well, so these were in order for the students to be successful and know what they have to do for the targets for the learning standards, we have to be able, they have to be able to know what those words mean. So that would be going over each part and breaking the standard apart into sections, or even just vocabulary and knowing what they need to do or what does this word mean in order to then to do the task that has been asked to be done.
And it's each of our learning, it's like if you think about a progression ladder. So like our first learning target is, okay, know vocabulary for standard. That's kind of like our foundation. And then we go up a little bit more rigorous, cite evidence, then reasoning sentence, then determine a theme, then analyze. It's kind of like we're using Bloom's taxonomy, we're using rigorous wording at vocabulary, thank you, vocabulary as we go through it, to where the last one is analyze how particular elements of a story interact. So we're talking about theme. Something we're also going to focus on this time around that we didn't focus on last time, what we're doing right now, is conflict, character conflict, and how that fits into a whole theme, because theme is, everything fits into theme and central idea.
Or even knowing the different types of conflict that there are. So first we're going to tackle that and dissect that conflict and knowing the different kinds, and then be applying that to the short story. So first doing that and then applying it to short stories afterward, and digging into theme too.
Yeah.
And so like in our old 15-day plan, if you look, we kind of start off with knowing the vocabulary for the standard, but also a conflict lesson where we have hyperlinked different lessons into it. So I'm just gonna go, so this is like bare bones, but we're talking about the different types of conflict, like Nicole said, man versus nature, giving examples, real life examples of that, so that the students understand it when they're applying it to the short story. Because having them identify with the world around them, or having them identify with the conflict or within their own lives, helps them obviously understand it when they're reading the short story. So
Yeah, because it can be kind of vague in a short story, so those personal connections are really important. And just to be clear, all of the 7th graders participate in this work, right?
absolutely, all 7th graders participate in this work. The comics. Okay.
So the first thing then is, knowing what the different types are, but then we had found these little comics that explain each of the types of conflict, and then that's where the other worksheet comes into place. Then they apply it, and then they find out they can do, we do Superman versus Batman, that sort of thing. You could do real life types of things they've seen in movies or shows, their video games, that sort of thing. So this is the first lesson to go through the comics. It gives them bullet points as to what to look for, how each of that type of conflict, whatever that may be, man versus machine, man versus nature, and then apply it to the worksheet to do on their own.
And also vocabulary words that we often use in stories: antagonist, protagonist.
And those may be words that kids necessarily haven't heard before.
Exactly, and just building up that knowledge around it.
Awesome. So if you don't mind, can you take me back to your 15-day plan? And tell me kind of how so this is a written one. So is one of the things that you're able to do, pull up old ones to modify?
Right. That's a
Okay.
great thing about Google, is that we have the old ones here. But don't worry, I probably have paper copies too somewhere. But we're going to take this one, and then we do like the conflict lessons. We're still going to be keeping that for the first, to start off the unit. But then that's where we're going to be switching and doing the different stories, just for, I think also it's important to find stories that apply to the students or that they can more relate with, because then that is, I feel like they learn better and they'd be more able to grasp either the story or the theme or the conflict. So that's the next thing that we want to do, because we already have these stories here that we had used previous,
but we're not sure if we definitely want to use these stories or if we want to modify it. We also include in our 15-day plan like Kagan strategies or connection strategies for the students that we know that will help them understand it better. And
What's a Kagan strategy?
So Kagan strategies are how would you explain it?
like I'd say like engagement or,
strategies. There we go.
Checking for understanding kinds of things. So this is before Kagan was a thing that we had done that the district had followed. So we have other engagements, right? That's another thing to be checking, like, because we're going to be picking a different story, how we're gonna check for understanding, that's going to be different. So we're taking the structure of this, but then really weeding it down to what we just need for bare bones, and then inputting the new stuff that we want to be implementing for this school year.
And like small engagement strategies, and you can use these small engagement strategies to check for understanding for formative assessments. Like, do they understand this? And then they're interacting with each other, and usually Kagan strategies only last a couple of minutes or so, and you can do a couple of them throughout the period, or you could use it like in middle school, bell work or something like that, just to get the kids thinking and moving around.
How long are your instructional periods here?
48 minutes.
Yeah.
48? Okay. People like to know kind of how long you're talking about for a period. So one of the things I heard you say was formative assessment. We talk a lot about formative assessment and then common formative assessment. So the common piece is that everybody that teaches the course or content gives the same assessment to all kids at about the same time, so you can look at data. Is that something you guys do together? And could you talk a little bit about how that works?
So this current unit that we're on right now, we're doing different books, but our summative assessment and formative assessment focus on the standard, and they're the same. So like a theme, if we're asking for definitions of themes. Now the examples they may use on the formative or the summative, the common, maybe from the individual books we're reading, but it is the same assessment because essentially we're teaching the same standard.
Okay.
So, but for this one, we are going to be doing all the same stories and everything. So everything will be, I mean, it will still be the same CFA, CSA. But yeah, our assessments are all the same, whether we're doing different stories or same stories, because obviously we're testing on the essential standard, which to see where the kids are at.
Awesome. So in this 15-day, I know you're going to revise it. Is there a spot where you could help our viewers see the specific stopping point for a formative assessment?
Well, what we've done before is like use like different colors, or I don't think it's on this one, and that's why, because this is bare bones, right? So we just have a little thing. But like,
this one is old. This actually is a few years older because we didn't do this because last year we implemented Amplify, like follow the format, do exactly what it was. So we didn't use anything but Amplify last year.
Well, that's kind of cool to hear how smart you are in figuring out how to strive for the standards and then align resources.
yeah,
It just takes time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Kathy and I work really well together. So I mean, just write, because we'd have to write. It was something that was for us, just ourselves. We're writing all of these.
Yeah.
Assessments out. So.
and to go on that, you have to like kind of check yourself at the door, and you can't be like, okay, I want this, or you have to learn how to really collaborate with each other and learn to live with things if you don't. But we always pretty much agree.
Yeah, we don't
we're
really
just like,
disagree about much.
we're just like, okay, yeah. But I mean, we've worked together so many years prior in the past too, so we've built that relationship. And then, but yeah, so we just kind of like, because like when we were thinking about short stories, like last week I emailed Nicole and I'm like, hey, I found some of these short stories, and she's like, you know what, I don't really want to do it. I'm like, that's fine, that's like totally cool. Like, but then she gave examples of the same author but different short stories. So it's kind of like, that's what the whole process is, right? So that's what collaboration is, and it was fine. It's like, I'm like, whatever, I'm good with whatever you want to do, because I trust her and I trust this will get done, and I trust we'll have a really good 15-day plan and really good lessons, and I trust the kids will understand it. So
awesome. So if you could scroll back up to your target list for this upcoming unit, and I know you may not have talked about this, but when you think about the learning targets of focus here, Kathy, you mentioned that it's kind of in a progression of least complex to most complex. Where do you think is a target where you're going to want to stop and have a common check just to make sure kids are learning along the way? Because obviously you don't ever want to be surprised on a summative assessment, or maybe limit how surprised you are on a summative assessment. So where's a stopping point where okay, this is a big deal in this whole progression of skills, we better stop and check here?
I think the second one, citing evidence, I've noticed that a lot in what we've taught this year. It's very hard for students to understand what evidence is, like claim evidence reasoning. And even now with the unit we're doing, we have a list of themes that the kids utilize while they're reading the book. We share the same list of themes, but they can say the theme, but then they can't take it to the next level and explain. Well, they can't explain their reasoning because they don't know how to explain it from the text. They don't know what evidence means from the text. Does it mean, do I quote it from the text? Do I explain it in my own words? And then taking that and formulating an answer as to why they chose a theme, why they made the claim, why the evidence they use, and then their reasoning. That's what they struggle on, is that reasoning portion and putting that all together. So
I think that applies though to more like literature-based readings, because it is their interpretation, and a lot of times they're because I think we do a lot of nonfiction now more recently, and they're so based on like facts, and they can't think outside the box really to apply necessarily the themes. And it's something that I think that we need to work on, because they need a balance of both.
Sure.
And so that's where our struggle is. So citing evidence with more literary text, not necessarily nonfiction, because they need that interpretation piece, and I feel like that is missing.
Okay. So what are some things you're going to do to get ahead of that? You know it's going to be rough for them?
Well, I think that, so we have concentrated on theme in this past unit, and I think so like working towards that, I guess, and that's been a longer thing because it's been a novel. So I really, I guess we have to reevaluate and see, like, once we get started and we do this first short story, to see how that's going, because it's a little bit smaller and they don't have so many pieces to be putting together. So I honestly want to wait and see what that's like.
Cool. This feels like a lot of work. How does the structure, and I know this is a loaded question, so feel free to say it doesn't help, but you know, what we're talking about and digging in on is the structure of standards to targets to progression to a 15-ish day cycle of instruction. Does it help? If so, how? If it's more work, how come? Or maybe it's a little of both. What's good about it? What's hard about it?
I think it's helpful, okay, because like if we think about, like when I first started teaching, we had these lesson plans, right, where you write out the lesson and you do this and you do that, and you're saying, this is what I'm gonna do this day, this day, this day, here's my resources. But you're not actually analyzing, well, I wasn't analyzing students' understanding and knowledge of the concept, right? And with the progression, I think, yeah, it's a little bit more work, but with the progression, you can target exactly where the student is having difficulty. If the student, and especially like for students that are in special education that may have reading disabilities, vocabulary is a huge thing, right? So if we're like our first progression, knowing vocabulary for the standard, if I am seeing, like with our first lessons, that's what we're targeting is the vocabulary for the standard, they're not understanding central idea, analyze, whatever we're talking about, then I have to go back and teach that to them. But I think the progression is really helpful, because we have it's like with anything, you have that foundation and you build and build and build. But if there's any part of it that is missing, you'll never build. You'll get stuck, and then the kids don't do the work, and then they tend to start like not liking to read and not liking to do this because they're struggling so much. So it's more work, but it's easier in the long run to target exactly what they're not understanding, and then hyper focusing on that the next couple of days or whatever, and then moving on, right? So building upon that.
What do you think, Nicole?
Well, I think it's like also planning for like your end goal. So you have this like 15-day plan, and like what do you want the students to be learning, and then you put those pieces in along the way and checking for that to be getting this end result that you want. So if you're going to, run a marathon, okay, so this is my end goal, but I have to do these steps along the way. That's kind of the same thing that I'm thinking about for planning. And so it is work, but once you have that done, like Kathy and I mean, we do the work, and then this is what we're doing. We check in, and there's not like scrambling around.
Yes.
It's planned out, and I feel better that that it's planned out. There's no like guessing as to what I'm supposed to do next, because I already have that.
Well, and that's also a thing too. It's not my kids, my kids that are identified special ed, my gen ed kids, we're taking the whole 7th grade into factor, and with this progression, with everything, with the common formative assessments, like we literally can just sit there and be like, okay, these kids got it. And then that also allows us, what we've done, we haven't done this year, but we did it in the past a couple years, is we have a thing called Flex, which is like kind of like our study hall where we can flex kids, where we used to flex between the 2 ELA teachers and myself. Didn't matter whose kids they were. Okay, this kid did not understand this part on this, you're gonna take these kids and focus on this, you're gonna take these kids. So it also helps us to
like build, I don't know how to say it, helps us to target all the kids that need help, like with that, with the organization, with everything that we're planning this way. I hope I explained that well.
Yeah. So if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's just starting to think about planning in these ways, what would that one maybe thing to think about, be careful with, don't step on this?
I think for me, it's the collaboration piece, right? So you have to be open-minded. You have to be able to have a good relationship with the people that you work with. And you don't have to be like best friends, or you don't have to be this, but you have to be able to willing to step out of your comfort zone sometimes. You know, and you know, there's just being able to get it done, and it helps so much. It helps so much when you're able to collaborate effectively, as opposed to I have this ego, or I have this ego, or I'm the younger teacher, I'm the older teacher, I'm this teacher. No, like you got like checking yourself at the door and being like, we're gonna put the work in and we're gonna do this. That makes this whole process, which is a lengthy process when you first start it, it makes this whole process so much better. And even though it's a lengthy process when you first start it, but then you have your skeleton of your 15-day plan, so like we have right now. So we're gonna take this, make a copy of it, and add to it. So it's like it's at first lengthy, but then you have this flow, and it just makes it so much easier.
Awesome.
I would say like just having the, you know, this outline and having what your end goal you want to be, you want to achieve, and then I probably would say having a good chunk of time at the beginning would be really helpful, because doing kind of bits and pieces and where did we leave off and whatnot, I would say the first time would probably be to have, you know, an institute day or something in which you could really dive into it, because at
That's good
first doing
advice.
the bits and pieces, it's so disjointed and whatnot that it seems like it would be more overwhelming then.
Yeah, less helpful.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. Aren't they amazing? I told you they would be. All right. Thank you for giving us so much of your time.